Welcome to the Book Faire Podcast. My name is Anthony, and this week we have an update courtesy of audience member Nancy. We also have a look at the latest books for young readers, including a new series launch and a look at a bill to fight against book bans on a national level. If you're interested in contacting the show with a news story, you're more than welcome to, but more on that later. Let's get started by taking a look at new releases, starting with 3 Pieces of Broken Glass by Emily Barth Eisler and illustrated by Vesper Stamper. A beloved relative's treasured artifacts convey events, personal and historical, in this meaningful telling from Barth Eisler, making a picture book debut inspired by a family story, and illustrator Stamper. An unnamed child narrator enjoys visiting his great-grandma, who sets the table like it's a special occasion, and serves our water in fancy glasses. When the youth inadvertently shatters one of the rose-tinged vessels, the woman offers comfort, saying, "It's not only good luck to break glass sometimes, but it's also a tradition," and gestures to 3 shards on the windowsill. Depictions of the events behind each follow. One part of glass, crushed under the bridegroom's foot on great-grandma's wedding day, is a token of all 65 years they were married and a reminder of their love. The other 2 relate to difficult events of World War II. The first, from Germany's Kristallnacht, was an indicator that it was time to leave our home and find a new place where we could be safe. The other is a good luck piece that preceded the family's wartime reunification. Watercolor and gouache illustrations depict the past in black and white and the present in full color. Jagged cracks reflect destruction, separation, and the world coming apart, while transparent, feathery washes background rich, detailed scenes of new lives coming together. This book is recommended for ages 4 to 8. Next is Forbidden Mountain by Brandon Mull. Mull launches an enticing adventure about 2 magically gifted teens on a quest to save their home from sinister emerging forces. In the realm of Anora, citizens' suspicions of corruption at the highest levels of the Empire, aided by purportedly malevolent spirits called the Accursed, compel respected Anoran war masters to strengthen their armies in preparation for potential civil war. Longing to become a warrior, 13-year-old foundling Mako endeavors to partner with one of the benevolent spiritual guides called Advocates. Instead, he forges a strong yet taboo bond with accursed spirit guide Narix, who promises to assist Mako in achieving his warrior dreams. After Mako's guardian-enhanced skills impressed the audience during a melee tournament, he's sent to train at Anora War Master Rojan's camp. Elsewhere, 14-year-old Arden joins Cat's Paws, a local gang she believes is responsible for her best friend's disappearance. When Martin, the group's leader, exploits Arden's ability to detect lies to help commit crime, she flees. But Arden knows too much about the organization's movements, prompting Martin to give chase and jeopardizing Arden and her family. Rescued by War Master Rojan, to whom Arden's mother was formerly employed, the family is offered refuge at Rojan's camp, where the white-cued protagonists' paths collide. Alongside action-heavy battle sequences, Arden and Mako's arresting, alternating narration propels the story as the characters confront questions of loyalty and ethics. Layered conflicts and world-building provide a solid foundation, and a cliffhanger ending will leave readers clamoring for the sequel. This book is recommended for ages 8 to 12. Next is My Sister the Freak by Danny Jones. Sisters learn to appreciate each other while navigating an extraterrestrial invasion in this entertaining graphic novel exploration of sibling bonds. 10-year-old Mary Seaver is creative and passionate about her interests, even if her classmates ostracize her because of her dedication to method acting the role of Flying Monkey in the school production of The Wizard of Oz. Mary's older sister, Al, a high school freshman, will do anything to avoid conflict, including following her mean girl bestie's directives on what Al should wear to the upcoming spring fling, and who would be an acceptable date. The siblings' challenges take a fantastical turn when Mary is chased by a large blue arachnid dragon creature. As Mary and Al find themselves stuck in the path of a motley crew of space invaders seeking an unknown person, Al must learn to accept her sister and herself to save the day. Action-packed panels by Jones, making a solo debut, burst with dynamic onomatopoeia and propulsive, fast-paced plotting that alternates heartening character moments with madcap alien antics, food fights, and superpowered battles. Mary's own crayon comics feature throughout. The siblings are portrayed with pale skin, and this book is recommended for ages 8 to 12. Next is The Delta Codex by Deva Fagan. A sheltered tween embarks on a perilous quest to save her home in this electric novel by Fagan, which recalls elements of Nausicaa and the Valley of the Wind. Young Delta is a codex, one of few gifted children capable of housing a memory of the past, called an echo in their minds. In the grand city of Danak Tol, it's considered an honor to become a codex. To keep the city safe from mysterious hazards beyond its walls by protecting its most powerful knowledge, but also the most dangerous. All their lives, codexes keep vows of silence, are forbidden from socializing with others, and must never reveal their echo. But when Delta encounters a rebellious minister's children, and they challenge her to use her echo to help stop the deadly bloodstorms plaguing Danak Tol, she must choose between following her teachings and listening to her instincts, which insist that something sinister is afoot. Expository dialogue and intermittent flashbacks gradually establish the intricate lore of Danak Tol. Concise economical storytelling and steady pacing mold a vast dystopian world whose charismatic leads evoke protective warmth from the jump. Characters are described as having various skin tones, and this book is recommended for ages 10 and up. Next is Rialto by Kate Milford. A lockpick's handiwork and a fascinating list of bequests launch a magic-fueled investigation in this entrancing standalone mystery from Milford. When the Vicker siblings, 12-year-old artist Dahlia and 14-year-old mystery fan Ivy, travel with their parents from Brooklyn to Rialto, Missouri, for their mother to research its long-shuttered theme park, their arrival coincides with a loss for their hosts, the Fourwinders. As 14-year-old Remy Fourwinder begins dispersing letters and objects left behind by his honorary Aunt Jess, the missives reveal details about a 40-year-old mystery rooted in Rialto Park's history and the dense local forest, rumored to have sprung up fully formed overnight. Appreciative descriptions of pattern-based arts and pop culture reference twine with sturdy in-world lore in a work that's jam-packed with elegantly lined costumes, props, and settings. Though the sprawling cast is occasionally unwieldy, organic-feeling characterization incorporates nuanced interpersonal tensions and portrayals of living with anxiety. Musing on themes of gatekeeping and subjective truth, it's a winking whirlwind adventure that serves as both welcoming entree to continuation of the author's carefully engineered oeuvre. This book is recommended for ages 10 and up. The final title this week is Forgive Me Not by Mar Costa. The paths of a changeling and the girl whose life she unknowingly stole unexpectedly collide in this spirited enemies-to-lovers fairy tale by Costa. Shortly before her 18th birthday, Princess Aisling is kidnapped at knife point by Forget-Me-Not, a servant of the Fae. When Forget-Me-Not wounds Aisling with an iron sword, the princess's enchanted armor glamour dissolves, revealing her true form, a purple-skinned creature with horns and a tail. Forget-Me-Not intends to take Aisling to the Steely Court, where she will return Aisling to her biological father, a fairy courtier, in exchange for freeing Forget-Me-Not from contracted servitude to the Fae. Aisling struggles to adjust to her new form and the social and magical expectations of fairy kind as the pair traverse the ever-changing landscape, facing off against powerful foes and confronting their shared past. Along the way, their relationship deepens toward romance, complicating Forget-Me-Not's plans. Uncluttered illustrations and straightforward paneling allow the bright and colorful hues of the fairy realm to burst from the pages, making for a lively adventure. Aisling's love and genuine belief in the power of love to conquer all, juxtaposed with Forget-Me-Not's jaded pragmaticism and the malevolent cruelty of the surrounding magical world, culminate in a mathematically rich narrative. This book is recommended for ages 14 and up. That covers the new releases for this week. Next, we'll be taking a look at some news. But first, if you appreciate the work being done on the Book Faire podcast, there are a number of ways to show your support. First, you can like, comment, rate, or follow wherever you are currently listening to help push the show out to new listeners. Second, you can follow the podcast on Blue Sky, Instagram, and TikTok at Book Faire Pod. You can also go to patreon.com/thebookfair to find episodes posted early, as well as links to news sources used throughout the show. Following on Patreon is free, and there are no posts hidden behind a paywall. Of course, the best way to help the Book Faire podcast grow is simply to share it with a friend, an educator, or a young reader in your life. Now on with the show. Rounding out this week with some news. Let's start with a story sent in by listener and former guest, Nancy Hudgens. Signed into law in May of 2023, Iowa's Senate File 496 implemented a ban on all books containing descriptions of sex acts and put into place a Don't Say LGBTQ provision prohibiting any program, curriculum, test, instruction, etc. relating to gender theory or sexual orientation. As with many of these bills, SF 496 also included a forced outing provision that required staff to report any accommodation meant to affirm a student's gender identity to their parents or guardians. This poses a danger to students who are coming out to their teachers and not their parents. Children may not always disclose their identity to adults in their life who are not supportive. This can lead to harm, emotional or physical abuse, or potentially becoming homeless when outed to their parents. There is a pattern of minors who are LGBTQ becoming homeless due to being disowned by their families, and bills like SF 496 will worsen this issue. In March of 2025, Senate File 496 was blocked by a federal court. U.S. District Judge Stephen Locher ruled that the bill went against the current standard on establishing obscenity and did not consider the artistic, literary, or scientific value of work. Unfortunately, that was March of last year. And now the Eighth Circuit Court of Appeals has reversed the decision. The appeals court ruled that Stephen Locher made an error in his decision that the law could not be enforced. The law is not yet back in the books, but it is heading back to lower courts for further review. PEN America weighed in on the decision with an attorney representing the organization saying, quote, "Allowing schools to impose blanket bans on sexual content does a disservice to students and writers alike. Such restrictions sweep up some of the most enduring and celebrated literary works and deny students the opportunity to read stories that reflect their life, as well as stories that give them insight into the experiences of others." End quote. This next story comes from Texas, where a library board is seeking to remove mentions of diversity from library materials. The Irving Public Library Board is considering changes to the system's material collection development policy. The potential changes would remove most mentions of diversity from the library's guidelines, as well as outline new standards of acceptance for books and other materials. The revisions would overhaul the policy language and place upfront, quote, reflections on the good life and the structure of society, end quote. One proposed revision is particularly striking in telling the goal of these changes. Quote, the Irving Library collection serves, to the degree possible, the interests of a diverse community without exclusion, end quote. With the following words, without exclusion, being cut in the proposed version. The following sentences are also to be removed from the potential revision. Quote, the IPL believes that individuals have the freedom to accept or reject an item from the IPL's collection for their personal use. Responsiveness to the interest of one individual or group is not restricted based on the dislike or objection of another individual group. End quote. There have been new bullet points added to the selection criteria for the IPL, including the requirement, quote, consistent with community standards regarding sexual explicitness and violence, end quote. This is in line with vague language of book bans, pulling anything that is considered inappropriate. Remember that this is not a selection criteria for books within the children's section. This new line would apply to the entire library if approved. To read more about these proposed changes, check out patreon.com/thebookfair. Next is a short story. Minnesota Supreme Court will hear the case of a trans librarian fired by a Catholic school. Razel Grace McCride is the former librarian for the Academy of Holy Angels in Richfield, Minnesota, who was fired in 2022 when she came out as trans. A lower court initially dismissed the wrongful termination suit against the school, and a Minnesota Court of Appeals upheld the decision, citing the First Amendment. Under this decision, religious institutions have power to fire employees in secular or non-religious positions like custodians, librarians, or nurses based on their religious views. At the heart of McCride's lawsuit is the fact that her position was independent of the school's religious teachings. Brittany Stewart, the attorney representing Razel McCride, said the job, quote, did not require her to be Catholic or abide by the church beliefs, end quote. Minnesota human rights law also allows for limited religious exemptions for right-to-work protections. However, after McCride was fired, the state legislature amended these laws to clarify that secular employees are not exempt and are therefore protected. Now, the Minnesota Supreme Court has agreed to hear the case of Razel Grace McCride v. Academy of Holy Angels and Archdiocese of St. Paul and Minneapolis. A date for the hearing has not yet been set as of recording. Moving on to the good news segment of the show, starting in Missouri, where voters have rejected conservative candidates for local school board. O'Fallon, Missouri, recently held elections for school board in the Francis Howell School District, and conservatives all lost, with one being an incumbent board member that is now losing their seat on the board. The newest members are Sarah Dillard, Jason Adams, and Kevin McGuire, who all beat out conservative candidates by roughly 3,000 votes. Francis Howell School District removed 25 books in February alone, and hopefully the new wave of support for more progressive candidates will see a change in how challenges are handled in the future. Kevin McGuire, one of the 3 new members, said in an interview, quote, I'm just so excited that our community has decided to finally put the hate and the divisiveness that has existed on the board to rest, so we can concentrate on the serious matters instead of the manufactured noise that's taken place over the last few years." End quote. The new members of the board have been sworn in on Tuesday, April 14th, one day ago as of this episode releasing. Our final story comes from Massachusetts, where a representative has introduced a bill to fight against book bans. When I lay out the stories to cover on the Book Faire podcast, I try to end with the best news I can find. Our previous story saw conservative candidates losing, but this next story is what we need to see more of, and that is proactive legislation being proposed to help protect the freedom to read. Reading directly from Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley's official congressional website, quote, "Today, with book bans on the rise across the country, Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley announced the introduction of the Books Save Lives Act of 2026. Legislation to promote inclusive literature, ensure an inclusive learning environment, and counteract the harm of book bans nationwide." End quote. Pressley announced the legislation at a community read-in event at All She Wrote Books, an independent bookstore in Somerville, Massachusetts. The Books Save Lives Act would ensure primary and secondary schools have a library with a trained librarian, would require public and school libraries to maintain a diverse collection of books, direct the Government Accountability Office to report on the effect of book bans on underrepresented communities, and what I feel is most important, classify discriminatory book bans as violation of federal civil rights laws. The bill is endorsed by a long list of organizations, including We Need Diverse Books, PFLAG National, American Booksellers for Free Expression, Authors Against Book Bans, Authors Guild, Boston Comic Arts Foundation, Every Library, Hatchet Book Group, Independent Book Publishers Association, Lee and Low Books, Macmillan Publishers, Penguin Random House, Simon & Schuster, Source Books, Students Engaged in Advancing Texas, and Black Lives Matter Grassroots. Not meant to sour the excitement or support of this bill, but this is not the first time that a version of this bill has been introduced by Pressley, and I do not see it being passed as it is. If we are fortunate enough for this bill to see the House floor, it will likely have revisions. However, the sweeping support of the freedom to read is commendable. Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley is doing the right thing by bringing attention to the epidemic of censorship happening in schools and public libraries. This bill has been introduced and referred to the Committee on Education and Workforce. The full list of representatives on the committee is public. I've included a link to the members on Patreon. If you see one of your representatives, you can reach out to them and express your support for the Books Save Lives Act. This will conclude another episode of the Book Faire Podcast. Coming this Friday, we will have an interview with Karina and Timothy Karsten, founders of Global Galactics. If you'd like to stay up to date with the show, you can follow wherever you are currently listening, or on Instagram, TikTok, and Blue Sky at Book Faire Pod. You can also reach out by email at bookfairpod@gmail.com. If you'd like to help the Book Faire podcast grow, you can always go to patreon.com/thebookfair. Following on Patreon is free, and there are no posts hidden behind a paywall. You can find links to news sources as well as episodes posted early. Simply add the RSS feed to your preferred podcast platform. Of course, the best way to help the Book Faire podcast grow is simply to share it with a friend, an educator, or a young reader in your life. Thank you so very much for listening, and as always, I'll talk at you next time.